This is the Altitude Daily Podcast. Everything you can't miss from today on Altitude Sports Radio. Mosher, Lombardi, and Kane.
Vic, maybe I have too much trust for the Denver Nuggets because I do trust this team still. All I need to see coming down the stretch here with their full complement of guys, and I hope that we see that sometime, but all I really need to see is a couple of games. Let's say this, Vic, look at me. Back-to-back games where they put it all together, they play good D, there aren't any blow-bys, they're picking guys up at the perimeter so they can't run downhill to the bucket.
Yeah.
And just see back-to-back games where they just get it. Everybody gets it, and they look like themselves, and then I'm like, okay, let's go to the postseason. I mean, I
how
have
many games?
I have that kind of trust in this team. But again, this whole yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, that's what's getting me. All I need to see is a small sample size to tell me that the Denver Nuggets get it, they understand it, now it's time to go to work. I'll be fine.
Can I give you one reason to be hopeful? One reason. It's this. Do you know how many games the Nuggets starters have played together this year?
It's not many.
The starters, the 5.
20?
I think it's 23. All right, the season is about to end, and we've seen a very small sample size of the full unit.
Now, that sample size is like a 500 record, right?
Yes, but it's off and on play. You know, there's been no opportunity for a 3-week period of the same unit out there to get rhythm, to get it going. We haven't seen that. Nowhere close to what we've seen in years past, where they've had time to find that rhythm. There is no rhythm. Every time you gain somebody gets hurt out of the lineup and you have to start anew. So what I want to see down the stretch, here's what I want to see. You sit Nikola Jokic as long as you have to. Again, I don't care how much he has to sit. I don't care. What I do care about is maybe with a week to play, you get everybody back. Mm-hmm. You give them some rhythm. Mm-hmm. You give them a chance to find that chemistry before the playoffs, and let's go.
The Altitude Daily. The morning sprint.
Von Miller should be a Bronco in 2025.
He should be.
Period.
He doesn't have to be a
Point blank.
Bronco now.
No, just 2025.
He doesn't have to be a Bronco during training camp.
Nope.
He doesn't have to be a Bronco in September. Do the Roger Clemens thing with him. When Clemens left the Yankees and he had all of those years where he'd come back with the Astros and just be like, I'm kind of bored on my farm. I'm a little overweight. My kid's a teenager now, and I believe, I'm almost positive his kid just made the Phillies opening day roster.
Did not know this.
And for years, he would just show up in the middle of July, like All-Star break, and go, I'll give you 12 starts, and maybe we'll make the playoffs, and I can be a good piece of your rotation. I think that would be the perfect way to bring Von Miller in. You bring him on a prorated contract, and all it is incentive-laden deals. You get X amount of sacks. We get past the wild card round, the divisional round, get into an AFC championship game, and you can make a couple of $1 million. And you don't have to go through the grind of training camp. You don't have to go through the grind and kind of, again, for Von at this point, not for the Broncos, for Von at this point, meaningless football games up until week 8, right? They matter for the Broncos. Like, you can't put the Broncos in the flip the switch category that we put the Golden State Warriors in, that the Kansas City Chiefs have been in for the past 3-4 years. But for Von, none of that crap matters. Look at what he did with LA.
Yeah, Von Miller's he's gonna provide some team a boost at some point in the 2025 season. And why, if you're the Denver Broncos, would you allow it to be elsewhere? Why?
Because you know where he'd look great? He'd look great in Kansas City. He would look terrifying. You put him on the other side of Chris Jones for 7 or 8 games? I would hate that. I would hate it.
Which is everywhere. Wouldn't be great.
I think he'd be the perfect type of guy to help your edge rushers. And we've talked about Von being that player to be the Demarcus Ware. But I want him to be that guy for Bo Nix too. Right? He talked about Josh Allen. He's been there. He's done that with guys like obviously Peyton Manning. But now he's been there with contemporaries of Bo Nix. He's learned from his time with Matt Stafford and with Allen up there in Buffalo. He can bring some sort of help to a guy like Bo Nix. I don't think it's just to help Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper.
The Altitude Daily. Columbus, Hastings, and DMAC.
You know, it's interesting. We've heard different coaches want different things. We had an example of Sean Payton who ripped into Russell Wilson. Wilson didn't rip back, that sort of thing. We saw Sean Payton do the same with Bo Nix. Bo Nix responded in an angry way. You said you kind of ripped into the team after Friday. I'm curious what happens if the athletes come back at you. And I don't know if that happens or not. I don't know if that's hey, that is what I'm looking for a little bit. You know, you see that scene in the movie Miracle, and I know it's a movie, but when you push the team to a certain degree, maybe you want a little pushback. Maybe you want a little emotion. I'm curious how you view that.
First off, you watch a lot of movies, I can tell. You always reference a lot of movies. That's pretty good. Listen, I think, as a coach, as an effective coach, you cannot be afraid of confrontation.
Okay.
You cannot be afraid of the emotions of it. I welcome it. I want it. That's just kind of who I've been, who I am as a coach. I have to be true to who I am. And when I get on guys, I always try to make sure I'm not making a personal attack.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference. Yep. Between lighting into a team in terms of our collective effort, our collective physicality, our collective urgency was nowhere close to being where it needed to be against Portland. And I challenged guys. I said, if anybody in this room disagrees, please speak up. I am here for that. I welcome it. And players know. That's one thing, especially about a group like ours. We have a group, a lot of veterans, a lot of young players, a group that's won a lot of games these last 6-7 years, probably more than anybody else in the NBA, if not one, maybe two. So our guys understand what it takes to win at a high level, and they also know what it looks like when we don't play our best basketball. And if I'm not willing to go in there and call them out and to speak the truth, I think I lose any and all respect that I may have in that respective locker room. Because now if I come in there and say, hey, good job, guys, don't worry about it, let's go to Houston, I have failed my team. So my job is to be truthful and to challenge guys to say, hey, man, if you disagree with me, speak up, and we can talk about it. And having those conversations sometimes might be uncomfortable for some people, but I think they are so necessary if you as a team, a collective unit, are going to get to a deeper, more meaningful place. Because you just can't sugarcoat everything. That's just not possible, and it's not in my nature. And I think the guys that have been here understand that.
The Altitude Daily. Kreckman and Lindahl.
Yeah, I don't get this, though. I don't get it.
Yeah, but it's the team I would have guessed.
Yeah, but
I thought you were going to throw me a curveball.
Jameis. They just signed Jameis Winston. Why do you sign Jameis Winston if you're going to add Russ?
Are they going to have a Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Shedeur Sanders quarterback room?
I hope not for Shedeur now. No, I hope not. And listen, here's why also this doesn't make sense to me despite all the stuff out there.
Yeah.
First off, it was literally just reported by ESPN this morning that Aaron Rodgers was not done with the Giants. He is now.
He is now, yeah.
Now, maybe we're going to get some news that Rodgers and the Steelers are finally getting together. But
yeah, Aaron's he's out of options.
Right. Well, yes.
He's got one choice.
Unless he can somehow voodoo magic Minnesota into signing. I'm telling you, I don't know why I wouldn't go talk to Kyle Shanahan in San Fran, but that's for another day. Seriously, Brian Daboll, because they were talking about who would be a good fit where. Daboll's a hothead, and that was the discussion on ESPN on Get Up this morning.
Yeah.
Daboll and Aaron Rodgers would probably not make for a good marriage because Daboll's going to yell at people. Who was the last coach that Russ had that was yelling at people? It was Sean Payton. Sean Payton couldn't take him. He lost his mind. And I don't think I feel like Daboll's in that Sean Payton kind of deal, don't you? I feel like they're both equally, they run hot.
Yes, but here's the counter to that. Situationally, Sean Payton didn't need it to work with Russ. He had a 5-year deal, and even though at the time we were sitting here going, you can't take on that dead money hit, Sean Payton's response was, watch me.
Oh, I can.
Brian Daboll, this is it for him. He has no future beyond. He has no future guaranteed beyond the season with the Giants. The owner already put out a statement when he brought back Shane and Daboll of just like, hey, I think they suck too, but I'm going to keep them around for another year, which is a wild thing to tell your fan base of just like, hey, they're on thin ice. That's insane, but he chose to tell everybody that. Daboll, you're right about temperament, but Daboll has to have this work. Sean apparently never had to have it work with Russell Wilson. I've got some really interesting stuff on that, by the way, that I want to hit coming up at 5:20, and it's sort of timely with this Russell Wilson news. But Russell Wilson is going to be a Giant. If you're a Giants fan, hell, if you're a New York football fan at all, New York, New Jersey, greater tri-state area football fan at all, how is it possible that the biggest media market in the country, number one, rules the roost? They have two teams. That are the worst teams in football.
Dude.
How?
What if, and here's another thing I think is crazy, because if you're the Giants, you're not taking Shedeur. And now maybe you are.
Maybe they are.
But that's a pretty good contract for Wilson.
I tell you what, if I was Daboll, I would want to take Shedeur because in the very least I could make the argument, well, marry me with a rookie quarterback and maybe that buys me another year with this job.
Maybe, but you've made some interesting signings with this thing. This sets up for Shedeur to make it to the Jets.
You've been listening to the Altitude Daily. Catch us live weekdays on 92.5 FM, the Altitude Sports Radio app, twitch.tv/AltitudeSR, youtube.com @Altitude Sports Radio, and your favorite smart speaker. Say Altitude Sports Radio.